Hey everybody, my name is Jasmine. Welcome to Faithfully Uncool, my little corner of the internet where I talk about faith and religious studies and spirituality and life and all that jazz. So if that's interesting to you, please do subscribe and join the Faithfully Uncool family. Today's video is inspired by something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. And that is actually this conversation that I had with a friend of mine. And this was at least like a couple years back, but I remember I said to them something around the sense of, I feel like everyone around me is this great Christian and I'm just not there yet. Like everyone around me is this Super Saiyan level Christian and I'm like Peter Parker, haven't even been bitten by a radioactive spider yet, level Christian, figuring out everything. And I feel like everyone around me is just more holy or more certain of themselves. Maybe they doubt less, or I don't know what it is, and it could just be in my head. I think a lot of our interpretations of how we look at people is in our head, and sometimes the community itself is not the problem, but it's our perception of the community. And other times it definitely is the community itself, because depending on who we are or where we live or what our circumstances are, we just feel like we're not welcomed in those Christian spaces. And so whether it has to do with the community itself, your perception of the community, who you are, what you do, or just whatever it might be about you, I think we all experience these moments as Christians of what I would kind of call this imposter Christian syndrome. We oftentimes talk about imposter syndrome when you feel like you're not good enough for your job, or you don't really recognize all of your successes, when we call it that term psychologically speaking. But I do think in this kind of, informal, not psychologically based term at all, what I consider like imposter Christian syndrome is just kind of this idea of not belonging where you are in the Christian communities or Christian spaces that maybe you want to be a part of, but have been routinely felt like you can't be a part of, or that you're not deserving of for whatever reason. And so you come away from these instances, or you just have this interpretation of yourself that maybe you're not worthy of calling yourself a Christian, or you are in some way a bad Christian, like it's a skill that you just have not acquired to be good at. And so maybe this is totally just me and my overanalyzing mind, but when I've had conversations with friends, or when I've talked honestly about how I've felt with other people, I do kind of see these remnants of different reasons why people have felt like they can't be welcomed into Christian spaces, whether it has to do with them or the space in of itself, like I said. And so this video is just going to go over some reasons why you might feel like a bad Christian, why it kind of sucks, and why you shouldn't. So the reasons are not in any particular order, but they're all kind of diverse. I think some of them do definitely lean on each other and have similarities to each other. And then there are other ones that maybe like the beginning of the list doesn't really look a lot like the end of the list, but more than one reason could apply to you as a single person. We are three-dimensional beings and faithfully uncool. So hey, who knows? But one reason that I want to bring up is maybe you feel like you're a bad Christian just because you don't know the Bible well, or you don't know enough about the Bible. So maybe you're in a setting where you feel like a lot of people know the Bible like the back of their hand, or maybe you haven't been to church in a while, and so you've kind of fallen out of knowing things about the Bible or biblical stories or what have you. Or maybe you just don't enjoy reading the Bible. I was once in a small group with a girl who said, look, I just hate reading the Bible. And yes, she used the word hate, like she just wasn't into it. And I think that, I don't think we should aspire to that or anything like that, but I'm saying, sometimes it's how life is. You're at this point in life where you can't connect with the Bible and you don't know a lot about the Bible. It's confusing to you. You're not sure where to begin. Maybe you're new to the faith, and so you literally are just not familiar with the Bible itself. A lot of Christians are raised Christian, but there are people who come to Christianity much later as adults in their life, or they rededicate themselves to Christ later in their life, and they kind of feel out of place. And so if that's you, I just want to say that wherever you are on that reasoning, you don't have to feel that way. The Bible is a big book. It can be an intimidating book, and it's definitely got a lot of history there. But when you're in the right community that can really allow you to explore and ask questions of the Bible, even maybe doubt certain things, it's okay. I think that as long as you're in a space that allows you to speak openly about the Bible, and maybe just sharing that with someone, if you are new to the faith, getting into a community itself can be really helpful. So definitely don't feel like a bad Christian if this is you, or feel like you're less than if this is you. Another reason, I have notes here, is that you're unsure how to read the Bible. And so when I say unsure how to read it, I don't necessarily mean like in the last example where you're not sure where to start, although that could be part of it. But what I mean by unsure how to read the Bible is really you're not sure how seriously to take it. And by seriously, I just mean you're not sure if you agree with biblical infallibility or not. So biblical infallibility is just a word or a term that really just means that someone looks at the Bible and they take everything kind of at that literal face value. They're just more traditionalists, fundamentalists, whatever word you want to put on it. They all kind of mean the same thing. And maybe if you're like a huge religious studies buff, then there's probably going to be different ways that you remembered these things. But at the basic level, that's pretty much what it means. Like you're not a literalist when you read the Bible, or you're not sure if you want to be one when you read the Bible. You're not sure if the Bible is completely infallible. Like you're reading it and you're like, were Adam and Eve really talking to snakes? Like, was there a Garden of Eden? Like, you're not really sure if you believe all the things that are written about in the Bible at just their face value. Like, was the earth really made in 6 days? Like, you're not sure, right? Like, you believe in science and you also believe in God, and you're just not sure. Some communities make that seem like something that just can't be, like they can't reconcile that. So it just depends on where I think you live and where you're coming from, why you might feel bad or less than because of that. But I do want to say that if you're someone who doesn't maybe believe in that biblical infallibility, you're an analyzer, you're a critical thinker, and that's just not where you come from when you read the Bible. And no, I'm not calling people who do take the Bible at face value stupid. I'm just saying that a lot of people don't. And so if that's you, I would just say that don't feel bad about it. I mean, that's normal. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad Christian. What connects all Christians is that we have a love and a desire for a relationship with Jesus Christ and a belief in Jesus Christ. And so I just feel like as Christians, sometimes we get wrapped up in the wrong things, and this is kind of where that insecurity can come from. So just saying that that shouldn't be you. If it is, like, you don't have to feel that way. Another reason that kept coming up that sometimes made people feel like they weren't being their tip-top shape, Super Saiyan level Christian was because they were dealing with anxiety or a mental health issue, and praying it away was not helping. And so I think it's kind of like all those t-shirts that are really popular now that say it's okay to have Jesus and a therapist too. You may have seen that on like a t-shirt or a mug or bumper stickers or whatever. And it's just this message of like, just because you struggle with a mental health issue doesn't mean that as a Christian your response is to pray about it and just expect everything to magically go away. We definitely do not want to demonize mental health care on this channel or in the Christian community. I think that is so ridiculous. I started going to therapy when I was in college, and honestly, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. It helped me navigate a lot of stuff, including how I felt about my faith. And this idea of me being a bad Christian did come up with my therapist because I just wasn't sure, where that stood and what was okay, And I've also had other great friends and people in the faith that I really look up to and that I've really admired who've also gone to go see a counselor themselves, whether that counselor was a Christian counselor or that counselor was someone who was not necessarily marketing themselves as a Christian counselor, but just took into account the faith of their clients, wherever you're coming from. I just think it's so important to really, if you feel like you need to talk to someone, you're having suicidal thoughts, or you're feeling anxious, or you're feeling overwhelmed, or you just want to figure out a direction in your life, whatever it may be, wherever you're coming from, and you just want to talk to someone professionally and get that help, I think that is incredibly important. And there is nothing not Christ-like about that. It is so important. When we talk about how our bodies are sacred and our bodies are a temple and we should love the Lord our God with all our soul, mind, and body, it comes to me like, well, don't we want our mind to be in the best shape? Like, our body and our minds are connected. Like, there should be no part of us that we are neglecting or feeling guilty for seeking health for. I've never understood that. And so I want to just say to you sincerely, if you're a Christian, who has ventured out and you're taking that step to see a counselor or a therapist, I commend you. You're taking such a brave step. And also, there's going to be links in my description about this topic and several others that I bring up if you're someone who's looking for a therapist. So I just want to throw that out there, that there are a bunch of stuff in my description about different reasons that I'm going to bring up that I can't go fully into. But yeah, for sure, it really is okay to have Jesus and a therapist too. And you know what? Jesus is absolutely 100% supporting you on that journey because he loves you and he wants you to be healthy mentally and spiritually and physically. Another reason why you might feel like you're not being a great Christian is because you just haven't been to church in a while, or you're not a part of a church currently, or you haven't been going to church as consistently as you want to, whatever this might be, where you could be in a transition period, right? Like you're seeking a community of churches, or you are new to the faith and, you're looking for a church, like stuff like that, right? It shouldn't really make you feel bad at all. It's just, it's normal. But maybe you've been hurt by a community, and so that's made you kind of break away, and you're kind of in this time where you're trying to just figure out who you are and what kind of church you want to be a part of. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. Christianity has a lot of denominations, a lot of different churches out there, a lot of different preaching styles out there. And while community is very significant, being with believers is very significant, there are times where you're just not sure what community you want to join or where to begin. And so while I say, hey, start with your local church, you might be someone who you've tried your local church and you can't cope. Like, I don't know where you live and I don't know what you're going through. So I just want to make it clear that that's not something you should necessarily feel bad about. And yes, you should be in a community. Being in a community of believers is actually very helpful. Humans are social creatures. If you're a Christian, being with other believers can be very, very helpful. But if you put yourself in a community that's harmful to you or doesn't really seem to accept you or be welcoming, then you probably aren't doing yourself much good or any favors for your relationship with the Spirit at all. So there's that aspect of it too. So I just want to throw that out there of, yes, there are times where you might be away from community. There is a private sphere, privately praying, privately doing Bible study, but also a public sphere, being in church, worship music, singing, dancing. There's a public sphere of worship and fellowship, just like there is a private sphere. And I don't think solely one or the other is the perfect way to be. I think you have to have a balance. You can't be in church all the time and never ever pray on your own and never ever look at the Bible in your own time. Both are significant, but I just want to say is that you shouldn't feel all the shame and discouragement if you're just not there yet with finding the community that's right for you. Maybe don't overthink it, but it is an important decision, so you don't have to feel terrible about it either. So those are all my kind of internal personal reasons why you might feel like you're not a good Christian or that you're a bad Christian, right? So the next reasons, they're reasons that I wanted to include because they kind of felt like elephants in the room when making a video like this, quite honestly. But they're reasons that might take you a bit off guard. And so I guess they're sort of the more like sexuality, sexual, gender type reasons. And so if you're uncomfortable with that topic matter, I'm just letting you know right now that that's kind of how the second half of this video is going to shift into. So I'm not trying to take you off guard. I'm just trying to be upfront about that because I do think that these reasons are important to point out, and I didn't want to leave them off for the sake of making people feel uncomfortable when I feel like, at least to me, when I think about this subject, it's like, yeah, people have definitely said that before, that they feel like they can't be a part of a church or they feel like they can't be Christian because of that. And so I wanted to make these reasons, I wanted to include them. That was important to me. But like I said, if it's not your jam or you weren't expecting the video to take that turn, this is your FYI. Here we go. So this part of the video really just looks at how people might feel like they're a bad Christian because of how they view sexuality and gender. And so maybe you're a member of the LGBTQ community, and you have felt like you can't be yourself in church communities or you can't be yourself in those spaces. I just want to say, yes, you can be a Christian. Jesus loves you. He doesn't love you in spite of being a part of the LGBTQ community. He loves you as you are, and that's really, really important. I think we should all understand that. This is an LGBTQ affirming channel here. But I also want to point out that that's a reason that people sometimes feel like they can't be a part of the church. The churches that are not affirming do exist. I think that this list would be remiss if I didn't point that out. Not to mention, this is something that's so valid in our modern day time. Unfortunately, we even have the United Methodist Church facing a possible split over this issue itself and how their members look at LGBTQ relationships and same-sex relationships and marriages and things like that, and allowing maybe, people of the LGBTQ community to become preachers and people that are higher up in the United Methodist, clergy hierarchy and stuff like that. I'm not Methodist, I don't know all about it, but I will definitely link some links in the description. But it does have people that are strongly attached to that denomination feeling very sad, and that there might be a split, and that if there is a split, the break off will be a denomination that's more conservative, and probably more conservative meaning less inclusive. Like, let's just be honest. So I think that that's something that's definitely affecting us right now, and we just got to be real that it exists. But if you're someone who's personally affected by this issue or those kind of issues when the church discusses them, I just want you to know that if a church doesn't have room for you, if a church does not have room for the marginalized, then they don't have room for Jesus either. Yes, you're a Christian. Yes, God loves you. You are no less than any other Christian at all. And don't be a part of a community that makes you feel that way. But there are affirming communities and affirming Christians out there. And so I really hope you find one, and I have links in my description to assist. Another reason linked to sexuality and or gender, why you may have felt like you're a bad Christian, is because you reject purity culture. So maybe you have not waited, or you're unsure if you want to wait, or you know that you're not going to wait until marriage to have sex. I have had Christian friends tell me straight up, girl, I knew I wasn't waiting, and that's their business. Like, I'm just not overly concerned about what people do in their bedroom with other consenting adults. Like, that's between her and Jesus. That's between them and Jesus at that point. So I get it. That exists. And I definitely have talked about purity culture on my channel, and talked about how whether you're waiting until marriage to have sex or whether you're not waiting until marriage to have sex, really, to me, the importance of that decision lies in the motives behind it. Are you buying into a culture that says hookup culture is the best? It doesn't matter. Whoever consents to have you, just go at it. Sex is whatever. Or are you on the church's understanding that says, your virginity is the most important thing about you, and when you sleep with someone, you lose that, and then if you get married and you have no virginity, like, oh my gosh, what are you gonna do? Obviously I'm overgeneralizing there, but the point is that there are two different extremes. And so sometimes people often just land in the middle of saying, yes, I believe sex is significant. Yes, I believe that I want to have a committed relationship, but maybe that commitment to them does not look like marriage. And maybe once they have that emotional intimacy, they move into physical intimacy. And again, marriage is not their waiting point, I suppose you could say. So wherever you are on that, this is not a purity culture video, but I just want to say that you don't have to feel, again, like you're less than or like you're a bad Christian because you're wrestling with that or because you're figuring that out. And so when it comes to your body and sex, I think bodies are sacred. I think sex is significant, and I think who you share your body with intimately does matter. And so I'm not saying to take the decision lightly. I'm just saying that wherever you land on this understanding of purity culture does not determine your worth as a Christian. It does not determine your value or your ethical or moral code as a Christian. It doesn't make you bad as a Christian who's not a virgin, or good as a Christian who is a virgin or who is waiting. You are more than your sexuality, your sexual orientation, who you love, who you sleep with. You are a full human being outside of all of those things about yourself. And so don't make anyone or any community make you feel like your whole value, your whole worth as a Christian is based on sexuality. It's not. The biggest reason you might feel like you're not a good Christian is because someone told you. With all the reasons that I've listed, they can all probably be traced back to someone told you. Someone modeled this idea for you of what a Christian looks like or what a Christian should look like. And somewhere along the way, as you grew older and understood your faith and understood Christianity, it seemed like that understanding of who is a great Christian looked less and less like who you are. And someone may have told you implicitly or explicitly that there's no room for you, that you're just not cutting it, that you're the Peter Parker comic book edition that actually never even meets the spider. You don't even meet Mary Jane. There's like nothing going on. You're legit just going through school, you know? Like there's no story to tell. And I think that a lot of times we feel less than because somewhere along the way we have listened to a lot of voices that either directly or indirectly were telling us that we didn't really matter and that we didn't really cut it. And so, what I want to say is that those voices are not true and they're not the voice of Jesus. And like I've said, if a church doesn't have room for you because of your pain or your struggles or the difficulties that you're going through, then they don't have room for Christ either, because Christ is always on the side of those who need him and who are struggling and who need help and who need redemption and who need salvation and who need a friend and who need a listening ear. So if a church is making you feel like they just don't have it for you, they don't have the resources, they're just not that great enough, then what I want to say is that you may have met some bad Christians, but you probably weren't a bad Christian. So go in peace. Thanks for watching.